That's fine.
Well, thank you, Musa. Great question that you have asked just at the end of the previous video on, where in Revelation do we see the perhaps transition from John's day, the wars and rumors of wars and the things that could have been seen as having been fulfilled in John's day to the
Hmm.
last day. So John
Yes.
was in the last days since the day of Pentecost, and all of
Hmm.
his ecclesiae or Christian communities were already in the last days as we're living out life in Roman Asia. But John's revelation is obviously communicating, but there's a last day of the last days that is yet still to come. And where on that trajectory of time are John's communities, and thus where are we in relation to that? So, a great question, and I think an important one. And I'll just answer it from the perspective of the six seals of Revelation. So
Yes.
we see John being taken up into heaven in chapter 4, and he sees the vision of God on the throne. And he also sees this seven sealed scroll. And so, in ancient days, when you have an official document, you take a wax, you take a whether it's a bronze or whatever, or wooden kind of a seal, and you put hot wax on the paper, you roll it up, put it on the where the paper overlaps, and you seal it, and that's the official
Hmm.
document. And somebody with official authority has to open it. So
Yes.
there's this seven sealed scroll that, okay, who's going to open the scroll? And John starts crying because there was no one found in heaven, on earth, or under the earth to open
Hmm.
the scroll. And
Hmm.
then he said, "Oh, don't cry, because look, there is one worthy. It's the line of Judah."
Hmm.
And so he turns and he looks, and what does he see? A lamb. And so I mean, there's a head turner for him. He's going, "What the heck just happened here? I'm supposed to see a lion and I see a lamb. What's going on?" But obviously, this is a symbol of Jesus Christ, the lamb who was slain, and he's found worthy. And so then chapter 6 begins this opening of the seven sealed scroll. We only get six of them opened in chapter 6. The seventh one is not opened until chapter 8, verse 1. But by the end of chapter 6, we have six of them opened. And what I suggest is that the first five seals are not to do with anything about the last day of the last days. This is what's happening in the last days since the resurrection of Christ. Wars and rumors of wars. There's a
Famine,
commander on
earthquake.
a horse with a bow symbolizing conquest. There is
Yes.
symbols of famine, of
Hmm.
disease, of wild animals running rampant upon the earth. All of those
Hmm.
things were already fulfilled in John's day. And so
Hmm.
basically, John, and there's also seal 5, where you have martyrs for the faith under the altar and saying,
Yes.
"Oh, when, oh Lord, will you avenge our blood?" And those martyrs
Hmm.
could have been not just Christians, but even Old Testament saints as part of that
Yes.
picture. So all of that could have been fulfilled by John's day. And so his followers in Roman Asia could have been going, "Wait a second, seals 1 to 5 are already fulfilled? That means seal 6? What? We are on the edge of seal 6
Hmm.
events." And seal 6 is now what I would call the eschaton, the last day of the last days. And seal 6, now we have this great earthquake. We have
Hmm.
the sky rolling up like a scroll. We have the stars falling. We have the
Hmm.
sun. I remember the Joel prophecy, the sun darkening and the moon turning blood. We have that same imagery repeated here now. We have islands and mountains being moved. And we have the great people of the earth saying, "Fall on us," because this is the day of the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. And so
Hmm.
this is the last day. And so anything of the first five seals, that just keeps every generation has those experiences. But the final generation, so to speak, will have the last day. So that's very similar to
Yeah.
Joel's prophecy, right? The Spirit
Hmm.
poured out day of Pentecost, and you'll see visions and prophesy, young men, old men, women, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But then the second half of that prophecy is phase two, which is not until the last day. And
Yeah.
it's really important to understand that Old Testament prophecy has two, you call it two stages. So
Okay.
there's the immediate fulfillment and there's the
Yes.
ultimate fulfillment. And the prophet saw it all as one event. And so it's as if I'm looking at a mountaintop and I see the
Yeah.
peak with what my eyes, I just see the peak. That's the event. But what I don't realize is that the mountaintop, as I'm looking diagonally, there's another peak that blends into the top peak because I'm looking at it diagonally. But if I was looking at it sideways, it would be
I could
up,
see both the peaks. Yeah.
down, up immediate fulfillment, down, and then
Yes.
moving up to the ultimate fulfillment. But from this
Yeah.
perspective, I'm just seeing it all going that as one fulfillment. And
Yes.
that's really important. Who was it? George Eldon Ladd emphasized that part of prophetic development. And so even with Christ, right, there's the people were expecting the Messiah to be a spiritual, religious, and political Messiah, and
Yes.
based on the Old Testament text. But Jesus
Yes.
revealed, well, yeah, you're right, but it's in two stages. Stage one is the redemptive element.
Yeah.
Stage two is the judgment element. And stage
Yes.
one is the spiritual, social salvation. Stage two is the political, military judgment.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to understand. So we see that similar thing in the seals, that I'd say only the sixth seal is the last day of the last days. And thus John's followers could have said, oh, wait a second, there's nothing that has to be fulfilled before Christ comes now. Because all five seals we see having been fulfilled already in our day. Any moment Jesus could come. There's no event necessary. And so what that also does, it reinforces the imminence that's expressed in Revelation. Revelation 1:3, these things will happen quickly. Jesus said, I'm coming soon, I'm coming soon. All of this explicit imminence is reinforced by that sixth seal perspective. And so it would have granted John's followers a real fervor to saying, oh my goodness, we better wake up because anything, it's like a thief in the night. Jesus could come anytime now. And so what that even does is, for those who hold a dispensational perspective, challenges that perspective in the sense that dispensationalism says, well, we still have to have this happen and that happen and that happen and that happen and that happen before the great day of the wrath of the Lamb. This adds a bit more, takes away unnecessary prerequisites. It's be ready anytime.
I like that. Would you say the extacon, the day, the end day itself, could it be 1,000 years?
So the eschaton time being 1,000 years long?
The time. I'm talking about the end day itself. The psalmist should be in Psalm 90 says a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day.
Right.
And Apostle Peter also used the same analogy. So I'm just now looking at of the sixth seal that talks about the end of end day. Could that end day translate into 1,000 years? Meaning, could we have 1,000 years of certain things happening that represents the end of the end, the extacon itself?
Okay. I guess anything's possible. I would say at this point in my thinking, that would be a stretch to take a generic comment like a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years like a day for the Lord, and somehow then say, John's 1,000 years, millennium, is also using that same kind of framework. You'd have to do more careful connection of those two. So yeah, I guess that's the one comment. I mean, 1,000 years. The big question is it a literal on Earth
Yeah.
literally for 1,000 years, or is it symbolic of an epoch? And
of course.
that's always the big question. And there's good evidence both sides of that equation, right?
Beautiful. Wow, this is so good. Before we are done, would you have any advice for believers on how to just deal with the information that is coming out of the media today? We're living in times where just information has multiplied exponentially. There's just so much out there. How should we as believers relate to that? Just this, as we wind out.
Yeah, I guess I come back to the purpose of the book of Revelation as one way to look at that. So it's called the revelation of Jesus Christ. And
Yes.
you can read that two ways. One is it's a revelation. It's Jesus revealing things yet to come. And that's part of what Revelation says it's intending to do. But the other way to interpret that is it's a revelation of Jesus himself. So Jesus is being revealed. He's not just doing the revealing, he himself, in terms of who he is being revealed. And I'd say as we walk through life and we see what's going on around us, if we are seeing connections prophetically with what Revelation's talked about, fine and fair. But if that's our only focus in how we, quote, use Revelation, we've really missed the essential boat of where Revelation is trying to dock. And that is that it's trying to bring us into the harbor of rest, so to speak, of seeing who Jesus is. And so if we miss who Jesus is, the lamb who was slain, the chapter 19, the word of God, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. We miss these images. We miss the worship scenes in Revelation. Go, oh, that's nice. I'm going to get to the good stuff, If we don't enter into the worship of Jesus for who he is, not just as we read Revelation, but as we walk through life, we've missed what Revelation is all about. It's really about a greater understanding of who Jesus is. And when we see him as very God magnified,
Yes.
The purpose of that is to help us live faithfully upon this earth, not to get in a hurry and a flurry, because God's seated on the throne. He's not flustered. And it's like, it will unfold in my ways and my times. And we need to rest in God's sovereignty and trust him. And when we read Revelation, seeing who Jesus is, we can gain a better trust and rest in him and go, whatever happens, Lord, you are in control and I'm your faithful follower. Grant grace for me to live out my testimony, my witness of Jesus in faithful ways. And that's the irreducible minimum. And, if people are reading Revelation, they're getting all hurried and flurried and they start, using Revelation as a weapon against people, you've missed everything in Revelation. It should bring us together as the people of God in worship and saying, what a majestic, amazing Jesus. That's the key. And I would say, John, if John the Apostle is the one writing the book of Revelation, then he got it, because I would suggest that John saw Revelation before he wrote the gospel. And that's why the gospel emphasizes so much the fact that Jesus is God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, where did he get that insight from? Well, if he saw Revelation, he couldn't have missed that insight. And now he's able to integrate that, right? So that's what John did. He integrated Revelation into his life and writings. We need to do the same thing.
Praise the name of the Lord. This is awesome, because just to your point, John probably saw everything he saw, and his conclusion was John chapter 1, verse 1. Yeah, meaning the heart and the soul of the book of Revelation is what John chapter 1 verse 1 says. It's John seeing Jesus for who he really is. Jesus revealed as the Word with God and the Word God. And I'm gonna end there. Dr. Ralph, thank you so much for this. As always, it's a blessing for me more than even for people that later will watch this, because I really enjoy this, and I feel like it's a university on its own. I get to learn so much, and I get to really interact so much, which is so beautiful. I really appreciate and thank God for you, for your time. And for the viewers, I ask you, take time to glean into these deep and wonderful insights from this conversation. So we bless the Lord, and thank you, sir. Till next time, which is I think in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, and bye.
Thank you. Always my pleasure, Musa. And thank you to all of your viewers, and trust that, as you just sift through all of this, that you have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying to you. And for some of you, there's some wheat in that. There's some chaff in what I said. Don't worry about the chaff. Just say, Lord, discern the wheat that can grow fruit in my life, that makes me a better and more faithful disciple of Christ. So thank you for these great questions and this time together. Amen.